Welcome to the Cyber Savvy Boardroom. Thanks for joining us today. Your hosts are myself, David Hamovich, and Alicia Cade, both within Google Cloud's Office of the CISO. You can find and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So, Alicia, today we have a really great guest.
Oh, indeed. Ready to meet a trailblazer? Well, we've got Karenann Terrell, also known as Kat to her friends, and she is a legend. Think digital transformation for titans like Walmart and Mercedes. She's on many boards, also advising Google Cloud in North America and championing women in STEM. This isn't just a career, it's a revolution. So get ready for insights, inspiration, and a whole lot of energy. Let's go, David.
Karenann, welcome to the Cyber Savvy Boardroom. Not only are you on public and private boards, but you are also a former CIO of global multinational organizations. So I know you're quite familiar with technology and cybersecurity. But curious, just to start out, what are some of the best practices that you have in place for continuous learning and adaptation?
You know, being on a board is a continuous learning experience. And it was one of the things that I really had to get right moving from my operating career to my CAT 2.0 time. In the area of cyber, there is no end to content that comes either through board portals like Diligent, NACD, I'm on Extraordinary Women on Boards, but you really have got to dig in and make that a dynamic exercise. It is not you get trained and you're done because of the dynamic nature of cybersecurity. So I think really savvy boards send articles around to each other, especially things that are in the news. They do not wait to be spoon-fed information from a CISO, but they have their own internal network where they're sharing information. I also, though, equally think that if you are going to be a cyber expert or somebody who's going to be relied on in the audit and the full board from a cyber point of view, at least once a year, you need to be making a full day investment. It's something programmatically to go out and see what's happening with frameworks, what's happening in the world of incident management, and be with other board members in that context. So I think you just really have got to make a commitment to doing that. It's not really like that if you're a financial expert. But when you're in the cyber world, that's what savvy actually means, is being committed to a learning dynamically.
So continuing on this theme, this is kind of very much from individual perspective, but also what are the collective kind of board strategies the board members can apply to understand what cyber risk is about within the context of the companies they're looking after and understand their cybersecurity posture, impact on the business, and therefore the so what factor.
Yeah, and I think CISOs in public companies and increasingly in privates are really getting very clear about the frameworks that they're using to talk about cyber in a governance sense and to talk about cyber with regards to things that happen and new events. So I think CISOs are doing a good job of putting the frameworks together. What boards have got to do is really indicate their availability, not just to be presented to, but even to participate and have expectations about tabletops that are being done in the case of incident at the company or incident that actually occurs more broadly outside of the company and third parties. So I think tabletops and asking about and participating in tabletops and the feedback, as well as just informal conversations that need to take place, not just in the boardroom, but outside of the boardroom about what each one of them are seeing in their portfolio responsibilities with regards to cyber. But that, again, should be definitely the purview of the audit committee. But if you are a board member not on the audit committee, cyber and business continuity, and data protection and security. These are enterprise risk management issues for the whole company. Finding a way for those conversations to transcend the audit committee only, I think, is the way for you to understand the posture of the company and, frankly, the talent of the individuals who are overseeing the security posture.
Yeah, I think that's great. I want to pull the string on that one a little bit more, because how does the board ensure that cybersecurity considerations are being integrated into the board enterprise risk management framework? And then, Alicia, I'm kind of curious, as a former CISO yourself, how did you think about that when you were presenting to the board?
Actually, if I can go back to your reference to the tabletops, Karenann, because as a CISO, there's plenty of frameworks out there, and CISOs are not the only folks that use frameworks. The CROs use frameworks, and CFOs use frameworks. And I always thought that tabletop exercises are this fantastic occasion for all the frameworks to come together, right? Frameworks aren't there to exist as separate scaffolds. They really serve the business of making sure that company can maintain its financial, operational resiliency as well. And that takes me perhaps to the point about the CISO and reporting. There's two elements of it. Firstly, of course, there is the standard ongoing regular reporting, whether you're reporting to audit committee or risk and technology committee, sometimes innovation committee. You need to focus on what really matters from the business perspective. So that so what factor is really key. So when you're going with some metrics, really think they are relevant and they tell the story. And you also want to make sure that the board members have a very clear view. They are your partners. You're not there to go and kind of give an update and leave. This is really about the partnership. And that takes me into another side. It's not just about the board updates. It's actually about the ongoing relationship with the board members. It's about continuous dialogue as we progress through the life of the business. And board updates are just the events where we all come together. But the relationships with the board members are very, very important. And that's what has been the most fruitful part of my interactions with the boards.
Yeah, and when you think about that interaction with the board, there is a necessity to not have cybersecurity as a CISO is presenting. Talk about cybersecurity like it's some highly differentiated, different risk. It is very, very key risk. In fact, in the two public boards that I'm on, it's at the top of the enterprise risks that are being managed because of the implications. But it is also the responsibility of the board and those reporting to the board to make it very digestible as a business risk, not to talk about it in terms of this is the ticky-tacky tech elements associated with cyber that we're working on, but really to work very hard to integrate that into the business language. And I'm not talking about taking it up to 30,000 feet and using buzzwords. Far from it. Using business language to discuss that risk and understanding the implications of cyber is part of the responsibility of the board and the CISO to have that dialogue on an ongoing basis for that to be adequately managed and monitored, I believe, in the board setting.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. I really love kind of putting it in that context of critical business services, but there's a lot of complexity out there. I mean, we have supply chains, third-party relationships as well. So how do you think about the company's extended ecosystem and ensuring that it's adequately protected then?
Well, totally right, David. I think what is getting proved to us daily in the world, whether it is about a third-party transportation system that has a breach issue or a malware issue that causes business continuity for them, which affects hundreds, if not thousands, of their customers, or SolarWinds, a piece of the software in the supply chain of a company, or frankly, the news of the app of DeepSeek that is now available in app stores for, BYOD mobile companies for their employees to go and download. The supply chain risk is not something that can be adequately managed by everything that you control. In fact, very good frameworks have got to get into the supply chain third party risk. And I think that this is very, very important in the age that we live in right now, that CISOs and boards are asking for third-party assessments. Before, it was we write things into contracts and then we have the right to go and audit our third parties. And there's thousands and thousands of those third parties. There's no way that an internal CISO and cybersecurity can go and do those monitoring. But I think we're headed into a time where dynamically being able to assess the third parties and not just take their word for the fact that everything is okay because of the dynamic nature of cybersecurity, that we're really entering a period like that, which is one of the questions that I'm hearing more and more. How in the dynamic nature are you managing not just what we control, but what we're partnered with? Because it could result in business continuity issues for me if my transportation system or my third-party software provider or any of those ecosystems which I've so carefully curated and put together in order to run my business has a security issue. So that is definitely in bounds, David, for us in this ever-evolving complexity as boards to make sure that we're adequately asking the right questions and overseeing. Once we've dispensed with our frameworks and internal risks, and once we have a really good handle on third parties, I think that we really have got to look end to end in a cybersecurity oversight as a board, not just at our everyday operations and what's going on with our data security, but we also, in this crazy age of digital transformation, which leads us into the cloud, and generative AI, which is going to present brand new innovative opportunities for our customers, our companies, our products, we have to think at a board level about what the cybersecurity continuum of monitoring, management, and actions are between operations and innovation. And for sure, the heavy touch of overall procedural process in operations cannot be applied in innovation. But equally for sure, you have got to have cybersecurity guardrails in at the very beginning of innovation, so that it's at least understood and known what those risk areas are so that they can be managed. So they don't show up at the end of innovation, which prevents us from scaling. They actually are there at the beginning, embedded in cloud capabilities that the CISO and cybersecurity can oversee. Ask those questions at the board. How are we in this trail of innovation that is being ahead of us? What we are doing with regards to cybersecurity, because the light touch early is much better than the heavy-handed late that prevents us from going to scale.
Yeah, and you mentioned the age that we live in. So it's almost impossible not to think about AI and the warp speed that we're moving at when it comes to tech innovation right now. So just curious on your thoughts there as well from a board perspective and overseeing that risk.
I think that nothing replaces strong guidelines and governances. So having really, really clear guardrails around what our tolerance is, and then having an ongoing conversation about our KPIs and metrics, as well as a governance framework about the things that we care, behavior-related risks internal to the organization, third-party related risks, incident management things. I think nothing replaces those two things in this oversight responsibilities. But I think that there is a lot more that has to happen. For goodness sakes, I'm sitting next to board members who are on various other boards and have various portfolio activities where we can bring that kind of learning about what's happening into the context of our conversations with the CISO, and frankly, share the contacts and the network of the security organization with our CISOs. I just think that that's hygiene 101 for a board to feel that they are savvy, is that they have interconnected their own networks with each other when it comes to information sharing and networking for the CISO.
Based on everything that we have discussed, I have a question which is not meant to be a tricky question, but it's fairly obvious and it's very much known when the boards don't get it right. They can feel it, so does everyone else. What do you think? How the boards can know whether they are doing it right? And what can they do to get it right?
So I think, Alicia, that you see more and more boards wanting to live vicariously through those that don't get it right. There's a lot of conversation that this news cycle had this major security issue, breach, etc., and asking what are we doing? What would we have done in that case? I think is an interesting place to start, but not enough. In order to know that you are doing it right, you have got to be very current and consistent in a dynamic conversation about the progress that you're making in the maturity of the cybersecurity organization, and not just ticking and tying out to a framework and checking boxes. Goodness, we are way, way past that as the monitoring device, but having an ongoing conversation about endpoint security, about the behavior. You do not just have the behavior related issues that come with somebody clicking on a link or replying to an email anymore. We're in the age of deep fakes. We're in the age of behavior related risks that we've never seen before. So I think that there's a really, really important ongoing dialogue around these framework issues. You can never be sure that you have everything right. But what you can be sure of is that you are complete in the framework and that you continue to talk about the maturity of the processes internal to the organization, and the maturity of the broader based relationship between business and the cybersecurity responsible individuals, because cybersecurity is a team sport. And there is very, very rarely that significant issues occur because somebody did something wrong in the security and cybersecurity areas. It's a team sport that is incredibly important.
That's great. So I know we're almost at time, but I always ask the same last question for our cyber savvy boardroom listeners, which is, if there is one key action that a board member could take away from this discussion today, what would it be?
I personally believe that what joins the board with the management team with regards to cybersecurity is that board members know their CISO. And the CISO may be sitting there and he's the last person in the room that somebody knows. But at cocktail hour, before and after the meetings, as a board member, extend your hand. Hello, I am Karenann Terrell, and I am on the X and Y boards, and I am doing advisory work at X. Can I introduce you to anybody in my network? Is there anybody on your team that I can do and help? We do that with our CFOs. We do that with chief go-to-market leaders, definitely with our CEOs and our chief operating officers. Our CISOs are covered by D&O insurance. It is the responsibility of the board to know those officers who are covered in the D&O. And all you have to do at cocktail hour is just extend your hand and say, hey, here is my network. It's something that you can do and it's free. But if I can offer one more powerful piece of advice, the greatest question that I have when you're just sitting around at dinner with board members is a board member will say, oh my gosh, all of this crazy day zero viral Netflix that I'm watching, what is a secret tip that you have in the crazy, crazy world that we find ourselves in right now? Make sure that your own personal cybersecurity is something that you are watching. Don't have a lack of security on your personal system, even if you're post your operating career, do security checks, make sure you're running antivirus. And my family, within the world of deep fakes where they can fake your voice and fake your video, whenever something doesn't sound right, we have a secret word. And the deep fake is never going to know my secret word with my family that has to do with my bank account and my PIN.
I like it. I like it. Very powerful advice, both the networking piece and I think bringing that kind of cyber hygiene home as well. So, Karenann, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today and for all of our listeners on the Cyber Savvy Boardroom.
Thanks.